Ah, yes, gambling, the pastime of the intelligent man. Or shall I say, cup and mug. Yes, today we are attempting to beat Cuphead within 24 hours or less. I'm your host, Should I Prestige, and let's see how far gambling can really take us. Long story short, the titular heroes Cuphead and Mugman find themselves in a casino manned by the devil himself. Seeing that Cuphead and Mugman are on a winning streak, the devil inquires them for yet another bet. However, this one involves their very own souls. Mugman backs down, but his older brother Cuphead is an arrogant fool and takes the deal, damning them if they lose, but reaping great rewards beyond their wildest dreams if they were to win. And well, he's kind of the devil, so he beats the titular Cup and Mug. However, they strike another deal. The devil sucks at his job basically, and the Cups have to take down the devil's debtors and return them to the devil to get their souls back. In essence, taking the biggest gamble of their lives. They are the embodiment of never back down. Never what? Never back down. Never give up. The boys rush back home to the Elder Kettle, who puts them through the gauntlet. Dun dun! The hardest obstacle course known to all gamers in the world. The tutorial. Only after beating that Dark Souls-esque challenge, we receive 1 coin and enter into the world of Cuphead. But before we can get into that, let me tell you about today's video sponsor. Have you ever wanted to watch a video with questionable quality? You always can on the Should I Prestige YouTube channel. All you need are 2 things, maybe 3. Internet access to youtube.com platform, and a device to watch it on. Thank you sponsors for the much needed support to make this video happen. Now back to the game. We are here to beat Cuphead, leaving no stones unturned. And how we will accomplish this is through obtaining all 42 achievements, beating all bosses with the S rank, beating the gauntlet of chests, collecting all coins, purchasing all items in the shop, doing all the mausoleums, beating all run-and-gun levels as a pacifist, and having played Cuphead to completion once before, when the DLC was added, I challenged myself to beat the game in under 24 hours to see if I could do it. As you can see, there will be a death counter and a timer displayed throughout the entirety of the video to show my progress through time and difficulty. Walking through the overworld, we are in Inqua Isle 1 of 4, and we have 5 bosses and 2 run and gun levels. We are introduced to many things, first being the helpful strawberry guy who graciously provides us with 3 coins, which lead us to the next point of interest, the shop. Wait, I guess we're going to the first boss fight, that being Botanic Panic featuring the Root Pack. I will be briefing you on each boss's attack moves and patterns fairly quickly because we have a lot of ground to cover. Our first opponent of our journey is Mr. Potato Man. He spits out dirt and worms that must be avoided in order to not die. After we beat Mr. Potato Man up, next is the Onion, who cries and cries, raining tears upon you that hurt. And lastly, we're on to Mr. Carrot Man, who has psychedelic powers which shoot mind rays at you and send a carrot army coming for you. We make short work of them. As the fight footage plays, I would like to explain Mugman's moveset. This will all be based on me using a controller. Mugman can move in any 8 directions and can jump and jump down from platforms by holding down and jump. Using the jump button while midair on any pink object is called a parry, and gives Mugman an extra jump from completing said parry. He can fire and switch between 2 equipped weapons. He can lock in place holding down RB and use directional inputs to shoot in 8 different directions. Lastly, he has EX moves and Super Art moves, which are both attached to the same button. On the bottom left of the screen, when Mugman has 1 to 4 cards, he will do an EX move. However, if he has all 5 cards, he will do the Super Art move. There are 3 different Super Art moves which are acquired through the completion of the mausoleums. The 3 Super Art moves for Mr. Mugman are Momentary Invincibility, Summoning a Spectral Ghost to fight for you, or a Horizontal Beam attack. There are 2 ways to earn cards while in the fight. One is through the use of the pink parries, and the others through damaging an enemy or the boss. With the basics out of the way, let's move on to our next fight. On to our next challengers. Welcome, Ribby and Croaks and Clip Joint Calamity. In phase 1, one brother spits out fireflies that home in on you relatively slowly while the other fists you with pink and blue fists. After that, the brother begins to start blowing you starting in phase 2, while the other claps you from behind. And for our last phase, they fuse together to become Cuphead's most prized possession, the slot machine, which launches 2 coins at you before bringing its arm down to gamble some more, which leads to various attacks that increase in speed and are based off of whatever the slot machine lands on. Examples are Viper, which is a bunch of platforms coming at you with spikes surrounding them, leaving the top to be the only safe space. A bull that has a hole that spits fire up or down based off where the flame comes from. And lastly, a tiger with bouncing balls just like the Viper platform, but even more difficult. Now for Goopy Legrand and the Ruse of an Ooze, the technical second boss of the game, and arguably one of the easiest, maybe even easier than the Root Pack, TBD. Goopy's first phase, he hops around left and right until a certain amount of time has passed, and he then proceeds to go for a headbutt, which can be crouched under or dodged depending on your preference. Once he has taken enough damage, he stops to take some roids, bringing up 3 pink question marks above his head. Once the TRT and trend have taken effect, he would still continue to bounce around the map in the same fashion as before, but instead now tries to punch you in the face. However, he can still be dodged by crouching set attack, and we finally finish him off for good. But wait, there's more! He comes back from the dead, using his own tombstone varying left and right through the background, only pushing forward to slam down and kill you. But as I said before, this guy's a chump and is eliminated very, very, very quickly. With the first 3 rejects being defeated, we've now reached our airplane tutorial. While in the airplane, you have the ability to move anywhere on the screen, parry using the jump button, fire out missiles, holding down the dash to become a mini plane, using special cards to fire straight shot missiles, and when full special meter, turn yourself into a nuke that explodes upon impact. Our first aviation flight, Hildeberg and Threatening Zeppelin. Within phase 1, that's when the mini blimps begin to spawn that shoot bullets, which can sometimes be parryable, while she continues to laugh at you. And yes, her laughter can hurt you. At this time, she can transform into a ram and charge at you at any moment. She also returns to herself to throw tornadoes your way that track your movement for a certain amount of time. She can then transform again between either Cupid or 2 ladies playing with a light star ball. Cupid shoots a straight arrow with 3 destructible stars that home in on your location. And the ladies launch their ball at you, which fires in a circular pattern which is unknown to the player until it starts firing. Once she has received enough damage, she will turn into a moon that sends stars that are sometimes variable your way, and will occasionally extend her face, sending UFOs of red and yellow color that will activate in different ways based off which color they are. Red UFOs activate when you go under them, while the yellow ones activate when you are right in front of them. Hildeberg is a great introduction to the flying combat, and the final phase is the only real difficult part in the fight. Before we proceed to the next fight, we go around the river to pick up our first secret coin and then head back to our last boss of Inqua Isle 1, Cagney Carnation and Floral Fury. In phase 1, Cagney can either extend his face on the top or bottom half of the screen and then stops to fire blue and pink seeds that fall from the sky and embed into the ground to create plants that home in on your position or stay on the ground as floor obstacles. If the pink seed is not parried, it spawns a plant that hovers over the top of the arena that is invincible until it opens its mouth to attack. Cagney also has the possibility to open his arms to spawn 2 possible attacks, the first one being the acorns that home in on you and then fly off past you, 2 being the boomerang bunny looking thing that flies across the top of the 3 platforms and then flies below them. After that short phase, Cagney has had enough and now plants himself into the ground level, leaving it fully covered in vines, while jutting out his vines onto the platforms occasionally while spitting at you with white and occasionally pink spit, I guess, or something like that. Overall, probably the quickest fight in the game. Finally finished with the first bosses of Inqua Isle 1, we have a meeting with the devil's right hand man himself, King Dice, who informs us we are doing a stellar job letting us make it to Inqua Isle 2, When we arrive, the Elder Kettle warns us that we're too sauced up and the devil won't be able to handle us pretty soon, and something stupid like choose to be good or something stupid like that. Our next aviation fight is afoot, for we are facing Jimmy the Great in Pyramid Scheme. I meant peril, I meant Pyramid Peril. Within phase 1, the Jimmy can either send out swords that find their spot for a moment and hold ground until they're ready to attack you, or he can send out treasure that little pieces of treasure come for you, and he has a possibility of also sending out his skull in a straight line to come attack you. Now for the most boring part of the boss, the auto-scroller section, where he confines you to shoot pillars that have his face on them to move forward before the screen catches up to you, while you avoid saw blades that go up and down, left and right until you reach the end. Upon reaching the end, you are on to the next phase, where he sends ghosts from the right side of the screen to attack you while his head is in a sarcophagus moving up and down, occasionally sending planets from his eyeballs that hit you. Once done with the sarcophagus, he drops down a puppet of you that stops moving along the right side of the screen to fire blue and pink bubble bullets at you, along with a wall of attack that keeps you confined to the left side of the screen. While this is happening, you are being followed by the Jimmy's hat, which will occasionally stop and shoot in 4 different directions in a circular motion around the hat. Lastly, the Jimmy grows all big and has 3 pyramids surrounding you circularly while he uses telekinetic powers to hit you, as well as activating the eyeballs in the center of one of the pyramids, which shoots out a beam from the top, bottom, left, and right of its eye. The Jimmy's difficulty only really comes from the beginning treasure attack, and if the RNG cucks you in the pyramid or the last attack. Other than that, there's no real issues here. Step right up to meet the one, the only, Beppy the Clown in Carnival Kerfuffle. The titular Beppy the Clown rides a cart, inching closer slowly until he begins to quickly ram across the other side. While he tries to bump you, ducks will spawn from the top right of the screen and go to the top left of the screen, some spawning with light bulbs that will drop once you are under them, leaving behind a trail of fire for only but a few moments. His next phase, he uses blow-up dogs, which are occasionally parryable, while a train full of passengers with evil intent come by, which need to be avoided. Once Balloon Man Beppy is defeated, he begins riding a horse while the train still comes around, with the horse either being green or gold, indicating which attack it will use. When the horse is green, it'll shoot 2 horseshoes at you that move up and down towards the opposite direction of where it came from. When the horse is gold, it'll spawn horseshoes above your head, which will eventually slam down onto the ground, smacking you in the face. On to the last phase. Beppy becomes a carousel and spins platforms around its center while the train speeds by at an enormously fast rate. At this time, Beppy produces penguins out of his mouth that throw baseballs at you and die once they are hit by the train. The last phase can get kinda intense if you lose focus for even a moment, but is doable. Very doable. Next up is Royalty with Baroness Von Bonbon and Sugarland Shimmy. The Baroness has many different minions that fight for her, and she rolls the dice to see who will fight next. Option 1. Muffin Man jumps from the castle to the opposite side until he reaches the end of the screen, where he heads back, embedding himself into the ground using his juices to hurt you. Another one is the Gumball Machine, who goes left and right along the middle of the arena and rains gumballs from the top of his head. Another one is a gumball that will perpetually chase you with a mini gumball following alongside it. The next minion is the candy corn, which moves along the infinity symbol pattern with mini candy corns that fly from the sky to try to eat you. And finally, the last minion, a chocolate bar or a waffle or something like that, flies and pauses, keeping its centerpiece in place while spreading out its body into 8 different directions. In the first phase, the Baroness sends 1 minion to attack. After they fail, the Baroness then sends another minion along with a steady pace of mini jellybean foot soldiers brandishing swords, some of which are parryable to make the floor is lava. She again sends another minion while the foot soldiers continue to attack and begins shooting us herself with her blunderbuss, which produces 3 clouds that circle each other within a tight spread, with 1 cloud even being parryable. Finally, her last phase, she forgoes minions and does it herself through her castle developing arms to crawl towards you, whilst the Baroness throws her head at you following your movements, while the castle spits rolling candy balls that you can parry all the way. This is where my first few deaths of the run took place. With that being said, the Baroness can be difficult under the wrong circumstances, and all the stuff that comes at your face all the time can make it very, very difficult. Finally, the moment I've been waiting for, we use a secret back passage to reach my favorite fight of the whole game. Grim Matchstick and Fiery Frolic. Now I'll explain to you why. When I first played the game, I made relatively quick work of every other boss up to this point. But once I got to this dragon, it took many attempts for me to beat him, to the point that I gave up the game for months, only to return later as a better, wiser gamer 2 months later, specifically, to decimate the dragon and destroy the rest of the game. With this side tangent over, we make our way back to the skies, but we're not in a plane. No. We're in the clouds. We're on the clouds. The level is pretty unique because of the cloud platforms. The level constantly moves, forcing you to move. In phase 1, Grim Eye laser beams you with 3 to 4 lightning eye laser beams, with one shot being parable per hit, while occasionally he'll shoot 1 or 2 fireballs that bounce up and down towards you, and sometimes he'll even place his tail in a location that after a few seconds it'll slam to the top of the screen and create a spiky wall of death. Onto his next phase, he opens wide, laying down on the bottom left of the screen, being the ideal dentist patient. Extend his tongue across the bottom of the screen as a marching band made of fire and flames. Haha, get it? Run across and they begin to pause for a moment, and then boom, they jump directly towards you or towards where you're going to go. Him being on the bottom left makes it difficult to hit him whilst dodging the marching band and staying on top of the cloud. For phase 3, he splits into a Hydra and they circle up and down the screen while spewing special fireballs that, once damaged enough, split up in the 4 directions, up, down, left, right, at blazing speeds, and sometimes the middle head just turns into a flamethrower for the fun of it and tries to game end you. Overall, I love Grim's fight, and I love his music too. It's pretty fire. IMO. I take a few more deaths, but nowhere near as bad as when I first started the game many years ago. And for the final bout of Inqua Isle 2, we have the hardest flying fight in my opinion. When I first played the game, that is, we have Mr. Wally Warbles and Aviary Action. In phase 1, Warbles flies up and down along the right side of the screen and only has 2 attacks along the birds that are ever present, with one of them occasionally being parryable. Attack number 1, he shoots an egg towards you, and once the egg hits the left side of the screen, splits off in 3 separate directions. Attack number 2, he chooses to shoot you with his fingers, which have bullets that kill. Once damaged enough, he stops in place and begins flapping his wings, spreading feathers everywhere across the screen, similar to that of a Toho game, until falling out of his home, leaving his nerdy son to take over with his one-shot parry ray gun, spike balls of protection, and his largely awkward pattern. Bringing down the little nerd brings us to the final phase, where Wally is on a stretcher while 2 paramedic birds launch pill attacks at you, while Wally can either turn his head into a trash can and hurl trash your way, or he can just spit out his heart and his heart shoots little pebble bullets at you. Once he is defeated, he is prepared to be eaten in the near future. One thing I was supposed to do before entering that fight was to get my weapon from the airplane guy, which was the grenade missile launcher bomb thing, which would have made the fight much easier. Well, that's it for Inqua Isle 2. On to a more positive note. King Dice begins to glaze us some more because he thinks the devil's in control, but we know who's really in control here, now do we? With that being said, that brings us to Captain Briny and shooting and looting. You already know the drill. In phase 1, a barrel constantly hovers over your head throughout the whole fight, while Briny Beard shoots you with his weapon, which can contain parryable bullets and often does. During their first 2 phases, Briny Beard will send out 1 of 3 sea creatures at a time. The first possible one being the dog sharks, which nibble off your feet and are pretty easy to kill before they can get close to you. The second being the squid to ink your screen if not killed fast enough, making it very difficult to see. And lastly, the shark just attacks the left half of the pier, and you continue this process for the first and second phase, where the ship then gets so irritated it begins to fire cannonballs back at you. And once he really has had enough, he grows and turns into a narwhal, ditches the captain, only attacking with fireballs that are extremely difficult to dodge. While the tongue is shooting fireballs, eventually it'll get really angry and launch a beam attack that can only be avoided through the use of crouching, and leaves you vulnerable to the ever-present barrel. The only real difficulty of the fight is the last phase, as the fireballs are so difficult to dodge and timing the beam with the barrel doesn't always work out. As a result, it took about 10 deaths or so just to get through this fight. Still along the sea, we are onto our next voyage, Cala Maria and High Sea Hijinks. I would like to say before I start, to all my gooners out there, shield your eyes and do not fall for temptation. Stay strong. Now for the battle. Maria has an array of attacks she can call upon within her first phase. Possible attacks include 3 ghosts with swords she spits out that come directly for you, a seahorse that perpetually pushes you up with his water blast, a yellowfish that spits out a mini electric eel that follows you for a bit before flying away, a sea turtle that launches a mine from its back that explodes in all directions, a red fish that can launch bullets that sometimes are parryable, and for the last attack she can launch is a spiky pufferfish attack consisting of a red, orange, and pink pufferfish coming from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen that can be shot, but upon destruction drops a fishy attack from the afterlife. Once sustaining enough damage, she gets angry and becomes Medusa, summoning eels to fire at you and occasionally using her stare to stonify you, causing you to wiggle to remove yourself from the stone. During this portion of the fight, the eels can be taken care of whenever you see fit. Now for the final phase, she decapitates herself for fun, flying backwards through a narrow passage with her snake octopuses occasionally shooting out a bubble with a skull in it, and her screaming you to stone while you try to avoid the spikes in your path. Sometimes it's hard to see how close you are to hitting the top or bottom in the last phase, but the real obstruction is getting stoned. Here's your drug PSA, kids. Don't do drugs. Getting stoned may sound fun, but it is very not cool. Sally stage play in the dramatic fanatic. In Act 1, she jumps around the stage and can jump up and dive kick you, jumping in the air and launching a fan attack sticking to the ground, warp above you to smash you, and their last attack, kiss you, producing a parryable heart attack that chases you up and down. Kinda true to life, you know. On to Act 2, she continues her fan attack while stopping to let 2 wind-up mice to come from each side of her, climb to the top of the screen, and drop down once you have past them. Act 3, she becomes an ethereal being, sending stage hazards your way, ranging from wave that has a meteor spawn with it, allowing it to be jumped over or dashed through, a lightning bolt attack, and the aforementioned meteor, which spawns a parryable star upon destruction. Now for the encore. Her umbrella chases you left and right as the crowd throws red and pink roses at you as she soars above like the angel she is. Miss Stage Play has now brought our total death count up to 50. Phase 1, Mr. Eyeballs launches bouncing eyeballs at you while you are introduced to the main mechanic of the level. The platform on which you stand is movable and small and can be either in the left, center, or right of the map depending on the direction you choose to parry toward. To prevent you from staying in full control, carved pumpkins fly towards you holding bars of soap that automatically move the platform, but can be parried before that is an issue. Once Mr. Balls is eliminated, Mr. Hands the Skeleton comes out of the 3 train compartments, with 2 being his hands and 1 being his head so he can smash you. You must avoid being smashed by his hands by either staying between his hands or staying under his head. Phase 3, the center train launches ghosts that follow you and drop pink heads upon death that, get this, also move the platform as well. But I digress. On the left and right trains, there are weird circular heads that occasionally shoot lightning at you to lead you to the opposite side of them, but they are pretty easy to avoid. And lastly, we have Mr. Conductor Man himself. The train comes to life and attacks you with a bone ring out of his nose that flies at whatever level you're at and comes straight for you. In order to damage the train, you must open the furnace by parrying his tail to open the furnace, which causes fire to come out of you. After sustaining enough damage, the furnace closes once again and the process starts over again. The design and idea of the fight is pretty cool, but other than that, I think it's just alright and there's nothing much to say. Rumor Honey Bottoms and Honeycomb Herald. Phase 1. Paul Blart flies along the bottom of the screen, occasionally throwing bombs that divide in 8 directions that are sometimes parryable, and underpaid worker bees fly left and right miserably, while you must constantly move upwards to avoid the boiling honey threat. Once defeated, the titular Honey Bottoms arrives from either the center, the left, or the right of the map, with her telegraphing which one she'll come from. If she comes from the center path, she will extend her neck through the use of a chain, which can be passed through while she spits out bullet billions that whiz across the left and right side going up respectively. Another way she can attack no matter which side she's on is through a parryable sphere that follows you around the arena for a short time until it eventually flies away, in which she'll send to your way. Same with the next attack. She will send it twice, but this time she sends a triangle that shoots 3 pink projectiles from each tip 3 times, and the main triangle does not follow you along the arena, it just kind of flies around vaguely. On to the last phase, where it becomes really difficult. You thought the first phases were bad? Well, check this out. She becomes an airplane of mass destruction that replaces the boiling hot honey, making her way harder to hit, shooting homing fists at you and forcing you to one side of the map with her saw blade attack. When I first played this game, this was a second fight to give me trouble due to the last phase specifically. In all fairness, it is still a difficult fight, but is manageable if you are good at the game. I would also like to mention that during this time, I'm still only using the pea shooter, so it makes it even more difficult that I'm using the pea shooter over another weapon to make the fight easier. Dr. Cal's Robot and Junkyard Drive. Back to another aerial level with Mr. Iron Giant. He has 3 damage points to choose from that can be defeated in any order. For his antenna, it fires a beam attack once he is locked onto your position. For his chest plate, it has a laser wall attack which can be dismantled through the use of a parry. For his stomach, he has mini fighter jets that go up in a switchback-like pattern towards you. Now for his damage antenna. He opens up his head to fire nuts and bolts at you. Once his chest is destroyed, Mr. Iron Giant uses his 3rd leg to deploy a magnet that sucks your plane in to provide resistance during movement. Or at least that's where I think it comes from. I'm not entirely sure if it's a stomach or chest that spawns that. However, when it recoils back to where it came from, it shoots blue balls of death going up and down from the arm's joints. His stomach, once destroyed, launches death missiles that home in on you. Once receiving enough damage or hitting you or another object, it emits an EMP damage field. Once all parts have been thoroughly defeated, he must now be eliminated properly through his fake heart while he continues with his secondary attack. Now broken-hearted, he decapitates himself and flies around like a maniac while sending death missiles your way. Finally, for the last phase, Dr. Cal comes to take control of his robot, and he has 2 attacks only. They're the same attack basically, but only different in variation. In attack 1, he uses a ruby, and similar to the Toho bullet hell games, launches 8 projectiles constantly out of the ruby for about 15 to 20 seconds, while he flies up and down, or he can have a diamond that shoots from 6 directions in a circular pattern, which is consistently easier to dodge. Dr. Cal's robot is pretty easy to get stuck on, but pretty fun to accomplish. Hoorah! Welcome to Werner Werman and Marine Corps. Mr. Werman is driving a can of what I can only believe to be tomato soup due to the fact of what comes out of it when he attacks you. Werner Werman fires explosive tomatoes that leave fire along the ground that travel to the opposite ends of the level, and stops to give you 2 springs to jump over him while he barrels towards you. He's such a nice guy. He can also launch various objects towards you using his handy dandy catapult, with some objects even be parryable, but once sustaining enough damage. He then centers himself, covers the left and right ends of the level with sticks with bottle caps at the end of them, and creates an upper platform and turns his cans into a flamethrower that can elevate or descend to light up the bottom or the top layer based on how he's feeling. One saving grace is if he is elevated, the middle is clear to go from left to right, so unwinnable situations are less likely to occur. Once damaged enough, Werner Werman gets eaten, and not in the good way, by Tomas. And once Tomas takes over, He can claw one half of the ground, making the roof come down from the same direction, or he can release the souls of the dead rats that launch pink balls at you that act in the same manner as the first attack, except this time, sometimes it can be parryable. When he's knocked out, it's revealed Werner Werman behind it all along. He was controlling Tomas and tricking us. Pretty easy fight, all things considered. Really nothing enough to say. The concept and theme, as always, is pretty cool. We love the theme. And with that, we have received the last debt for the devil. Finally, I made it back to hell. My life goals are coming true. Or is it death goals? I'm not really sure. Wait, how can I be in hell if I'm not dead? Oh wait, my soul, it's got taken by the devil. Oh no. Welcome in the devil's right hand man, Mr. King Dice himself, and all bets are off. With that existential crisis over, I get an achievement for clearing the aisle, and the Mr. Dice Man wants to talk to us. His fight is pretty unique, and unless you get a bad mini boss fight, the whole thing's pretty easy, and his fight is chump change. The gimmick of the level is to roll the dice to see who you're going to fight next. There are 9 possible mini boss fights that you can fight, and 3 possible extra health points when you land on the specific square. There are also 4 safe spaces on the board, but you have to fight 3 mini bosses minimum with 1 start over space at the very end right before the finish space. I'll run through the bosses one by one pretty quick because each of them only really have one gimmick. Starting with boss number 1, the Martini fires an evil eyeball at you that is in the shape of an olive that attacks you, while the other 2 launch a stream of alcohol at you or spill alcohol along the ground. Mr. Chips moves from the left to the right to the right to the left, dividing his body in sections. To avoid him properly, you must duck, dodge, dash, jump all through his body. Boss number 3, Cigar Man spawns back and forth between ashtrays and spits swirling fires at you. Boss number 4, the Domino Couple uses spike walls and floors to force constant movement and spits bouncing projectiles your way. The Rabgician only has 2 attacks, spawning a row of magic that can spawn above or below you, with only one area being accessible through the use of a parry, or a circling of magic to surround you and close you in. Boss number 6, Chariot Dead or Alive, throws explosive presents at you while Ghost Riders come at you from below. Boss number 7, the Roulette Lady spins around like a ballerina and stops to spin balls at you that force you into a small area, with only the parryable platforms being your only savior, and they are only active for a few seconds after being parried. Boss number 8, Magic 8 Ball pukes on you while Pull Q Chocks jump at you. Now for the final mini boss, we have the Symbol Monkey, who is by far the longest, and the gimmick is to play picture match, and then he chases you with his symbols and notes that come from clanking them together. Finally, the moment we've been waiting for, Mr. King Dice himself, and he only has 1 attack where he spawns marching playing cards towards you that need to be constantly parried over to stay afloat until they are done. And he just repeats it over and over again. In my personal opinion, I think that was a lackluster end for such a noble slave to Mr. the Devil himself. Not to mention that he's the main bad guy we've been talking to personally and is literally the devil's right hand man. But I digress. Maybe the devil can put on a better show. We'll see. With that being said, finally the moment we've truly been waiting for, with the infamous Mr. Satan himself in one hell of a time. Phase 1, Satan has 6 possible attacks while many devils come back and forth from the left and right sides constantly. Attack 1, his head turns into a goat and he tries to smash you with his hooves, which must be jumped over at a precise time. Attack number 2, he morphs his head into a spider and tries to smash you from above a few times before returning back to his body. Attack 3, he turns his head into a dragon and pushes you from one edge of the screen to the other. Attack number 4, he summons 4 balls that bounce around the arena, and one being parryable, and in my opinion is the hardest attack to dodge. Attack number 5, he summons 5 fireballs in a square with 1 in the center, 1 being able to be parried, while the others rotate around the center. Attack number 6, he uses 6 seeking fireballs, 1 parryable that attacks you 1 at a time, while the rest stay in a hexagon-like pattern in the center of the arena. For his next phase, he brings you further underground to 5 rock platforms and his head in the center and the background, where he launches a rotating axe from his eye, poker chips fall from the ground onto one of the platforms throughout the rest of the level, and a flash bomb that needs to be parried before it explodes in a wide radius to hurt you. His next phase, he eliminates the furthest left and furthest rightmost platform and puts purple creatures on the left and right side to fire skulls straight at you. At the same time, the devil spawns Devil flies from his forehead that swoop down to hit you and explode in one hit. Finally, the last phase and the last fight of the base game, he starts crying. Yes, the devil starts crying pink tears and still continues launching poker chips at you because that is all we can do to crush his soul. Same as the last fight, I feel like it could have been slightly more finale-y, but it is still somewhat difficult and fun in its own rights. With that, we get our achievement for beating the game on normal, as well as getting an A rank on every level in Inkwell Hell. This would be a good time to mention that there are 3 difficulty types in the game: simple, regular, and expert. They're pretty self-explanatory, and one thing I will say is simple does not progress the story, therefore it is not needed to be played on. Thanks to us, mostly Mugman, we have freed the people of Inkwell Isle from the devil's tyranny, and they can now live happy and free lives. Aside from working class Bs, minimum wage for them will be decreased. And that is the base game done. Time to move on to the delicious last course. DLC for short. Now back with a little progress report, over 100 deaths / retries in about 3 hours. Now for the first mausoleum section, where we must protect a spirit in a vase from ghosts through parrying the ghosts. Out of the vase springs our friend Miss Chalice, who provides us with a devastating super beam and access to the delicious last course. Once arriving, Miss Chalice learns a cookie that makes her temporarily corporeal at the expense of the consumer, crafted by the chef Salt Baker. We are now able to play as Miss Chalice and are shown here in the tutorial that we can do an invincible dash automatically if we crouch and dash, and we can now only parry through dashing, as well as have the ability to do a double jump, with the first jump being shorter than Cuphead and Mugman's regular jump. We are here to gather ingredients to make Miss Chalice fully corporeal without having to sacrifice someone else. Now for Glumstone the Giant and Gnome Way Out. In phase 1, you are standing on platforms that go up and down at random and can be removed by these little mini teal gnomes that hammered into the ground, while a spiky layer of gnome heads exudes from the ground below and come out when they are stepped on. Gnomes also regularly come from the ground and begin shooting you with fireballs from their head. Luckily, both gnome types go down in one shot, so can be defeated relatively easily. Glumstone himself has 3 attacks. He can open his mouth to reveal a boiling pot of gas with 2 gnomes mixing it and sending it your way. He can use a bear to cut off the left side of the screen, and his last attack, he can put up a geese crossing sign where he sends along the top half of the arena, forcing you to get low when the whistle blow. Now for phase 2, he brings out the puppets of King Dice and the Devil to play catch while you're in the middle, trying to avoid the ball as they throw it at varying heights. While this happens, gnomes will pop out from the ground, jump into the air, fall back down on top of you, and sometimes can be parried. Once the dynamic duo has been defeated, Glumstone eats you and leaves you with 5 bony skull platforms to work with, while gnomes and his stomach work together to kill you. Gnomes pop out from the left or right side of the screen and shoot darts your way, which also can sometimes be parried. His stomach acid hurts to the touch, and the ulcer in his stomach spits chicken at the platforms that make them recoil back into acid and continue until a bone is eaten by one of them, where it sticks a bell at the end of its tongue flailing around that signifies it needs to be parried to reset the platforms. Overall, this is a great introduction to the difficulty that the last course will bring. Mortimer Freeze and Snow Cold Scuffle. Mr. Mortimer, as he'll be called, as to be not confused with Mr. Freeze, trademark, has 3 attacks. In his first phase, he will whiz left and right along the top of the map. He can spawn 4 mini icicles that stick into the ground and then jump out to run at you, but can be destroyed as long as you crouch and shoot at them. For his second attack, he will use a fortune teller table to spawn 2 cards, sometimes parryable. For his last attack, for no reason at all, he spawns a giant whale and tries to smash you. Mr. Mortimer then turns into an evil giant snowman that can warp into a fridge. While in snowman form, he can slam into the ground and have an array of swords penetrate the ground towards you, inching its way closer and closer. He can roll across the ground like a snowball, or jump over you in said snowball form. When he returns and turns into a refrigerator, he has 2 attacks. For one, he shoots out ice cubes that divide into 2 on impact, and if they are big enough, they will divide into 2 once, and then divide into 2 one more time for each of the 2 ice cubes. Or he can launch swooping ice popsicles that die in one shot or can sometimes be parried. For his last phase, we travel the sky For his last phase, we travel to the sky to view the Aurora Borealis, and he becomes a glass snowflake with 3 attacks. 1, he launches his eyeball that emits vertical lasers occasionally and goes from one side to the other back and forth to his mouth. 2nd, he spawns 4 snow cones that converge on the middle, trying to catch you lacking. And first, lastly, he launches buckets at the wall that 1 can be parried, and upon impact split into 3 crescent moons that shoot back at you. Mr. Mortimer gets more difficult with expert, so there's that. Now for the Howling Aces and Doggone Dogfight. It's a flying level, however, we're not the ones flying. We control our platform by standing on the side we want it to go to. The first phase has 4 attacks. Throughout phase 1 pub will release 3 tennis balls upon you. Fire hydrants will spawn to home in on you and can take a beating. The main threats are from the main dog, who can use a cat on either side to spit up 3 yarn balls that need to be ducked or jumped over. Or he can float down with a parachute hat to spawn 3 bone attacks coming from his tattoo that come from top to bottom and return from bottom to top. Typically 1 bone can be parried or sometimes 2, but the main difficulty element of the phase is the fire hydrants. If not destroyed promptly, they'll linger and spawn another right after the other, making dodging the yarn attack, tennis balls, and hydrants altogether nearly impossible. Once defeated, you move into the second phase where you fight 4 pups on jetpacks that circle your plane. They each fire letters at you that spell out bow wow and sometimes are parryable. The easiest phase, but is difficult to do damage because the pattern that they are flying in. That brings us to our last phase, where Mama Dog comes out and attacks us with lasers and then rotates our screen to change our controls up, and she constantly rotates the screen until she's finished. While she attacks you, she uses dog balls to hit you, with red ones lining the bottom and yellow ones lining the top. The concept is really cool, but if you don't want to do with it, you can avoid it through the use of the secret phase. You don't eliminate the pups in the prior phase, but make their jetpacks smoke, leading to you fighting a totally different phase altogether. Probably my favorite fight of the DLC, and is the second most difficult, as you'll see soon. And ironically was my first perfect run, which is kind of sad, honestly, but it's whatever, I guess. Esther Winchester in High Noon Hoopla. A real flying level, and she has a plethora of attacks. She can shoot you with snake oil that reverses back to the right side of the screen to come back at you. A bird that occasionally does a flyby and drops dynamite on the ground from above your head. Esther can pull a cactus across from the top or the bottom of the screen, and her little donkey buddy spits out mini spike balls at you. Now for the next phase, there's only 2 attacks. First, she starts sucking you along with a bunch of money, with occasional parryable objects. And once she's done sucking you, she releases safes falling from the sky that contain homing money. Once dealt enough damage, she sucks herself, and is cooked and turned into sausage links. She then flies backwards, spitting at you with occasional parryable stakes, and opens cans of mini sausages that block your path, acting as walls. Now for her final phase, she becomes a fully canned sausage that constantly spits jalapenos that are occasionally parryable at you, and 2 lines of sausages that continuously intersect one another that need to be flown through with gaps in between and around. Ironically, without even trying, I get an achievement for beating her without destroying any of her minions. So that's a plus. And for our last ingredient, we go and tangle with the mob, the Moonshine Mob, in Bootlegger Book. In the first phase, Spider-Man calls in bombs that explode after being passed by with a 1-second fuse timer. He goes through the 3 different floors of the map and occasionally swats a caterpillar at you that bounces around until it's destroyed. It also has a lot of health. Guards will also fire at you with stink guns that emit rays of stink, but it can also hurt Spider-Man for minimal damage, and it's not often that he gets hit. Afterwards, Fine Shit comes out with a record player that circles you with 2 beams that one activate to kill you while the other does nothing. And among the top and bottom layers, barrels tap dance in your way. Once taken out, the anteater comes to lick you up from one side and sucks up the bugs from the other side to make a ball of death. and then switches sides and repeats the process again. During this process, the ball has a lot of health, and if not taken away in time, another ball will come up, leading to more and more chaos. Once defeated, Big Boss tries to trick us but is unsuccessful and yells at us using a microphone to get last minute parries in. It is very difficult to dodge the bug ball in my opinion, and his mouth is really hard to hit in this phase, but other than that, this fight is pretty easy. With all that being said, it is time for the penultimate fight of the DLC, the one, the only Chef Salt Baker. Guess what? He's evil all along, and I can show you proof of how evil he really is. First, he steals Miss Chalice, and then there's his fight. The worst, most vile, dumbest, stupidest, most rage-inducing fight in the whole entire game, and I'm here to walk you through it. I hate Chef Salt Baker with a passion. And I cannot use the words I want to use to truly express my hatred for this Salt Baker. First, there's a perpetual flame that jumps at you. He abuses all the ingredients, the sugar, the limes, the dough, the strawberries. And he goes through the strawberries by squeezing them out the container, which cuts them in half to make them come at you at an angle from the sky. He cuts the limes into slices to make them boomerang around the map. He smashes the sugar into cubes to make them come from one side going up and down like a wave, and occasional parryable ones. He cuts out animal shapes into the dough to make them hop towards you, to make them more difficult to hit, and on top of all of that, he is constantly moving left, right, and center in the background, making you have to track his movements while you're tracking the immediate threats coming your way. And that's all just for phase 1. For phase 2, he holds you while fire is still very present and follows you while he sprinkles leaves to drop down on you, while 4 pepper shakers in the corner each sneeze projectiles at you, and the only way to damage him is through damaging those pepper shakers that attack him. Now for phase 3, he creates a salt wonderland and has a perpetual saw blade follow along the ground. His ballerina self also bounces, making himself hard to hit, easy to get hit by. This phase is by far the shortest and least difficult, but at times can be very sketchy. Finally, for his last phase, his heart comes to attack us. It can be parried while he forces us to constantly move up with platforms that keep falling down. This is by far the most difficult and irritating fight in the game I've fought thus far, and it's terrible in every aspect. I hate everything that Salt Baker stands for. I hate it all, and you will see momentarily why. With my pride stricken from me, and many deaths later, I concede and finally do Miss Chalice's tutorial and use the shop to buy DLC weapons to make this fight easier. Miss Chalice and the DLC weapons make this game much easier and would have sped up the whole process immensely. However, I must return to the chef and take my revenge, but die once and buy the spread shot to try once more. After but a few tries, I managed to conquer him with new weapons and the trusty Mug Man. Upon his defeat, we save Miss Chalice and force him to rewrite his wrongs happily ever after. That is it for the main game and the DLC. Now we will delve into the cleanup section of the run. We will now be acquiring the missing achievements we need to complete the game to 100%. Starting with one thing I neglected to mention previously was I bought a cursed relic and solved a puzzle to fight a devil and an angel that both attack but would only do damage when I looked at them. This awakened the relic, and we'll talk about that later. So I returned to Inkwell Isle 2 and 3 to achieve my second and third supers. I then return back to Inkwell Isle 4 and take a mysterious ladder that leads to a king and 5 doors, starting with pawn, knight, bishop, rook, and queen. Each one of them is a parry challenge where you must avoid the obstacles and projectiles whilst doing damage through the use of parries. The pawn first descends from the rafters and runs the opposite direction, who must be parried to remove their head. You must do this 8 times to beat them. Upon completion of each level, you will receive 2 coins. Now for the knight. He's more complex and has a few moves. He prances about waiting to attack you and can do a charge attack to dash across the screen, an uppercut slash, a big slash that leaves him vulnerable the longest, and you must parry his main to deal damage. One last thing he can do is tell you to come closer if you stray too far from him. Next up is the 4-headed bishop, who circles around the map firing bells at you while you must extinguish all the candle's flames before proceeding to parry the heads. This repeats until the last pattern where all candles are lit. Second to last is the rook, who grinds his saw to send skulls and parryable heads your way. Each time you parry a head, it'll bounce back the way you parried it. You must hit the rook with the heads to deal damage to him. You can hit his head for double damage, and as you deal more damage, he'll send sparks from his grinder along with the heads to make you watch the ground while you're at it. Finally, the final challenge of the board, we have the queen, who stays in the background and can either launch a parry wall of statues your way or launch jewelry you must dodge while you fire cannons at her that refresh after a few seconds each use. For defeating her, we acquire the Checkmate achievement for defeating all chess pieces in the King's Leap. We are pushed out of the leap, and the ladder is sent to the entrance of the aisle, where upon the return, you can face each individual piece or do the gauntlet all in one life. So I choose to do the gauntlet due to the queen fight. I have now changed to using Miss Chalice. I die once to the knight and once to the bishop, but on my third try, take out the queen in the fastest time I could, clocking in at about 18 seconds from when I could control Miss Chalice. With the gauntlet defeated, I now return to the chef and kick his behind, making him my first boss defeat with Miss Chalice, my first S rank, and my first S rank of Inkwell 4. What is an S rank, you may be asking? Well, an S rank is the best rank achieved in Cuphead. When you have 3 hearts, use 6 super cards, beat the boss in 2 minutes and 5 seconds or less for most bosses, and some less restrictive time restraints for others. Play on the expert difficulty. By the end of the level, the S rank deems you mastered the boss basically, and it becomes easier with Miss Chalice due to her having 4 points of health instead of just 3. Also, expert difficulty increases difficulty of each boss in different ways, so it's hard to say in one definitive way how the game is exactly harder. Before covering the next bosses, I'll be reviewing the weapons and abilities I will be using. One is the crack shot, which shoots a short distance, then tracks the nearest enemy for damage, and its super is a planet that fires at enemies. Once parried, shoots for the closest enemy, and gives you a little bit of a boost in height in a jump fashion. No. 2 is a sprite shot, shoots 4 close range shotgun-esque attacks at enemies, and the ability fires out in 8 movement directions. Lastly, charge. Fires charged shots when holding the fire button long enough. It does massive damage unless you're tapping it. The super close range explosion is the super. That's not worth it in most scenarios. Her super consists of giving her an extra health point essentially through the use of a shield, and when she takes damage, she doesn't take real damage, it's more of like fake damage, and still gives you invincibility frames. Moving on with each boss, they will be given a shorter spotlight as most major aspects of the fight are the same aside from more enemies and stuff of that nature. So appearances will be brief compared to the prior. So I will go through each phase and show why there are so many retries to it and show a little compilation of restarts. This will be the same format for every boss basically. Now for Mr. Glumpstone, major points of resets would be the first phase. The frontmost platform would be hit down, leading to the bear creature pushing us into a near unwinnable situation. Other than that, other deaths involve poor gameplay. For phase 2, the ball is sometimes harder to predict, as well as trying to avoid the gnomes at the same time is very challenging. Phase 3, I didn't reach the last stage much, and that led to nerves being the reason for death on the last part. Very average fight in my opinion, regardless of the gnome deaths I took. Mortimer Freeze in phase 1 was pretty easy all things considered and was not the cause of many restarts. However, for phase 2 it was a major cause for restarts, particularly the ice cubes and popsicles coming together at once. And then occasionally the snow monster would move, and then after that I would be cooked. On phase 3, what would get me most of the time was the bucket attack, as it would angle just right where I would try to dodge it and walk directly into it instead. Or sometimes the eyeball attack would catch me by mistiming it. Back for the Howling Aces, phases 1 and 2 were pretty easy, and I just barely missed getting it on my first try due to being slow. And the last phase is the only really hard part due to making one mistake that can snowball you into oblivion pretty quickly. I even switched my super to be the vertical blast in one run. I just kind of locked in, you feel me? Esther Winchester. But before that, Miss Chalice has some different playing mechanics to Mugman, namely shooting 3 projectiles with her first gun and shooting grenades with her second. And her super moves perpetually move towards the boss. The hard part about the first phase is the quantity of stuff to dodge, and that leads to resets. The idea in the second phase is me getting hit by money that just spawned outside of my view and I can barely anticipate it. In phase 3, uneventful. And finally, the last phase moves way faster and needs way more maneuvering than before. And now for the mob, with most of my deaths in the first 2 phases being stupid, avoidable mistakes, and when I would make it to the end, I wasn't dealing damage fast enough, and I had to change up my strategy and focus on using charge to perfect my accuracy and perfect my damage. Once I got that down, I finally obtained the S rank. We've gotten S ranks for all the DLC bosses. Time to head back to hell. Wish us luck. Now we're on to the devil himself. The first phase is most of our restarts, but after that the fight is relatively easy and only takes a few tries. We even finish him off with a super art, giving us 2 achievements, one for defeating a boss with the super art and one for beating a boss with Miss Chalice's super art specifically. King Dice. Honestly, each fight caused trouble in one way or another. It was just the result of poor gameplay and stupid mistakes adding up together. And I couldn't consistently get the dice rolls I wanted, so every time I had to fight a boss that was difficult or didn't want to fight. After about an hour and a half to 2 hours, we finally ended up beating him. Now for the Phantom Express, I switch out one of my weapons for Converge, which fires the same way that Miss Chalice's plane attack fires, and its special 1 beam of lightning towards the direction you are looking. I basically took 1 death per phase and finished it within a few tries. For Miss Sally's stage play, yet again another easy victory with a few minor hiccups, however we were able to persevere pretty quickly. Now on the other hand, Cala Maria, both phases 1 and 2 were difficult and led to many deaths, because in phase 1 there is far more going on than there is in the normal mode, and it's way more difficult to dodge when multiple attacks are happening at once. And for phase 2, when the plane gets frozen, it makes you an easy target for the eels to lock on and get you while you're in a vulnerable state. Even the last phase is difficult, but I made it there a few times, so it wasn't as big as a hurdle as phases 1 and 2. After beating Maria, we move on to the next aerial assault with Dr. Cal's robot, where the first phase and last phase were devastating because the beginning level is so hectic and so packed full of murderous robots. It's so easy to find yourself stuck between multiple attacks. You either get hit or get hit. The last phase leaves you in the same predicament, just not as extreme, with the ruby and diamonds being far more sporadic than they were previously. After many deaths in a long time and a little bit of luck, we were able to achieve the coveted S rank. We take a detour and begin our first run and gun level, in which you run and gun. Self-explanatory, however, there is no expert difficulty, so the highest achievable rank is A+, or is it? There's a not so secret higher grade of P, which is achieved through pacifism, in which you do not kill any enemies and proceed to beat the level. Each run and gun level can be beaten using pacifism, and also contains 5 coins, which are needed to obtain all items in the shop, which we will need for another achievement. The title of our first run and gun we will be playing is The Rugged Ridge, where we must avoid the miners as they throw boomerang-like pickaxes at us to make it to the elevator platform that uses mini gymnastics, firing fireballs at us, and sand-looking monsters to spawn from the ground that kind of just charge around. Once down from the elevator, we have to jump over doors with faces on them to make our way to the final section where a Cyclops chases us down a big, narrow hallway of broken ruins. Now back to our boss rush. Mr. Worman. We take 3 done deaths at the beginning and 1 at the very end. However, after that, we take out Werner Worman with ease. Mrs. Honeybottoms, one of my least favorite fights for obvious reasons. Much to my dismay, only took me 2 attempts to become successful. On to our last resident of Inkwell Isle 3, Captain Brandybeard, yet another easy one with only a few minor fails in the beginning. On with our next run and gun level and the final of Inkwell 3. We have the Perilous Piers, where Goldines fly around everywhere and weird looking creatures try to pelt you with spiky balls. You must ride the crabs to get the coin and avoid the lobster crossing over the seabed, and finally ride the octopus whilst avoiding the pearls and destroying the rocks in front of us. Next running gun of Inqua Isle 2 is the Funhouse Frazzle, where you can switch from being upside down or right side up and need to go through the scary one-eyed wall mouths to avoid doing damage to it. Then once you make it through, you must avoid the rockets, the stars, and the launchers. You must then speed past and maneuver past tubas through the last mouth wall to complete the level. And the last running gun level of Inqua Isle 2 is the Funfair Fever, in which you use a trampoline to jump over tall walls whilst avoiding balloons. Then make your way to the next tent with platforms that disappear when a ball is shot from a cannon. You finally make it through to the end where you must avoid the hot dog attack with its condiments: mustard, ketchup, relish, and the wiener itself. Unfortunately, this video got corrupted, so all I have is the very end where it gives me the P rank, so sorry. Anyways, once again back to our boss rush. We have Grand Matchstick. This fight's S rank was a little bit different from the others because its true difficulty comes from getting the 3 parries required from the fight, and he's now on a different side, which I'd argue makes him easier. Other than that, his first phase was the most difficult part, and the other phases were not too much to handle once the parries fell into place. Now Mr. Warbles, whose most notable change is his eggshells leaving no free space when hugging the left side of the level no matter where you are, in the first section that is, making this immensely difficult. Wally Warbles is one of the hardest expert aviation bosses in the game. Comes in first and second to expert difficulties. What can I say? He's hard. Mr. Warbles brings me my 1000th death due to his unforgiving nature. After suffering through this pain, we finally beat him and let his bird buddies consume him free of charge. Now our last flying level of Inqua Isle 2, the Jimmy. His first phase was the hardest part of this fight because the randomness of the first attack and the perfect timing of everything lining up to smack me right in the face. I could actually make it through the initial attack. I would make a mistake in the 3rd, 4th, 5th stages, forcing a restart. Beppy the Clown. Most deaths are as a result of vehicles, whether it be a go-kart, a train, or a horse. Most deaths came from the bumper car. Beppy only took a few tries to be eliminated. The last opponent of Inqua Isle 2 was the Baroness herself, who was a cakewalk. Get it? Wink wink, nudge nudge. Only died a few times to the little guys with sword. Now on to Inqua Isle 1. Cagney Carnation took 3 attempts and was the fastest fight in the game. Now for the second to last running gun level, where we ascend a tree avoiding woodpeckers, wood flies, and wood itself. Also ladybugs and a mosquito looking thing at the end. Maybe a firefly, I don't know what it is exactly. Being the true second running gun level, it is pretty easy. Now I'm ready to move on. I go to fight Hildeberg, but in simple difficulty. I go to fight her only in my mini plane to get an achievement, and what do you know? I give up and come back to this later to fight Hilda on expert and regular form. And what do you know? Truly the easiest flying fight of my life. One take should I prestige has entered the building. Finally, our last running gun level, we have entered into Forest Follies. Pretty much plays like a regular forest theme level and any type of platformer. Except I can use finger guns, and I have to use pink mushroom fart to get past the acorn producer near the back half of the level. Oh wait, I missed Chalice, and I don't have to deal with any of that. Casually just jumping over the level. Double jumps are better than Cuphead and Mugman. What can I say? Now for Senor Goopy. Yes, I know I messed up one time and I'm terrible at the game, but I beat him right after that, I promise. Second to last hardest fight of the tutorial aisle, Ribbert and Crow. I really just couldn't get the pattern down for the longest and was making stupid mistakes that led to restart after restart. Even when I would make it to the end and beat them, I was too slow and needed to start over again. Given time, patience, persistence, and pattern recognition, I could beat it, but first, I course corrected momentarily. I equipped the cursed relic that awakened from the angel and devil fight and used it to beat Goopy. When equipped, every time you fire a different weapon and only have 1 HP and add another HP when you parry. Once Goopy was eliminated, I set my sights for the root pack and squashed them. Yes, pun intended. Allowing me to move on to Ribby and Croak, who I also make short work of, and Cagney Carnation, to whom I gave the same treatment. The relic is less effective in a plane, so I fight with Hildeberg and decimate her Moving on to Wally Warbles, who showed me 3rd time's the charm. Next on the hit list, Baroness von Bonbon, who tries to show me up and kinda does, but eventually I show her up. I beat Djimmi and Beppy and awaken the Divine Relic, which wields all weapons at once, changing every time you shoot, and contains every charm except for Miss Chalice's cookie. Honestly, not that useful for what we're doing here, but a pretty neat concept. I returned back to Ribbert and Croak, and I was finally able to best the brothers one last time. Now for the penultimate fight, the Root Pack, who goes down in 1 round. Pretty anticlimactic, am I right? But that's what I get for doing things backward. Now that all the bosses are done, I return to Hildeberg to finish my mission and eliminate her using only mini plain bullets. Took a long time and many bullets. 4 minutes. 19 seconds to be exact to get the Bravo Zulu achievement. Time for the final bits of cleaning up, talking to NPCs to get the rest of the missing settings I need, grabbing the last missing coin from the Perilous Piers and the overworld coins that I missed. For beating every boss with Miss Chalice, I get a cool new filter that turns her gold to show how goated she is. The second to last thing I have to do is have 9 HP in one fight using Djimmi. While circling in a random spot in the overworld, Djimmi gives you more hearts. Yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to figure that out, but in my final achievement, I purchased the last weapon in Pork Rind Shop for the last achievement. That's Cuphead. It took me about 20 hours, give or take, and over 1,000 retries / deaths. I may be washed, but not super washed. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any game suggestions that I should 100% complete, please let me know. But with all that being said, I just want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for staying till the end. I hope you have the perfect, pleasant, phenomenal, prosperous present you can. Why not take a quick break? Tune the radio. There's chores to do, there's leaves to rake. Strum the old banjo. You can practice your Lindy Hop. And maybe later sing with your barbershop. Why not take a little quick break and come back for more? Or then come back for more. Or please come back for more.